Fear is for the winter, when the snows fall 100 feet deep. Fear is for the long night, when the sun hides for years. In that darkness, the White Walkers came for the first time. They swept through cities and kingdoms, riding their dead horses, hunting with their packs of pale spiders, big as hounds.
Nerderotic.com.
Well, we're back with another George R.R. Martin Winds of Winter update, and I'm not going to get you too excited. It's not good. It's been 3,409 days since the release of A Dance with Dragons, Book 5 in the A Song of Ice and Fire series. To let you know how long ago that book was released right after the end of Game of Thrones Series 1. A fact the book fans, old and new, who have been longing for conclusion are well aware of, but I'm here to prepare you for some more bad news. How could it be any worse than my last video on this subject, where I said we would not get an end to the A Song of Ice and Fire series? Also, in that previous video, I mentioned that I believe that George is only halfway through the Winds of Winter based on what he said in his last post. You can see that video right here. Well, I'm starting to think you're not going to get the Winds of Winter either based on what I've read. One thing that is confirmed 100% is we will not be getting the Winds of Winter this year. Winter is not coming still. And the man who set out to subvert the tropes of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings remains J.R.R. Tolkien's bitch. Hey! Sometimes I do get the feeling that most of you reading my post here care more about what is happening in Westeros than what is happening in the United States. Hate to break it to you, George, but yeah, the main reason most of us come to your Nada blog is not to hear what you think of public policy. It's not to hear who you are voting for or who you think we should vote for. It's progress on the Winds of Winter. And this year was the most opportune time to release your book, because the one thing you're good at is escapism, not public policy. And that's what we were waiting for. So let me assure you that when not sweating out election returns or brooding over other real world problems, I have continued to work on the Winds of Winter, which is very good to hear, because along with you, while the rest of us are sweating out real world problems and worrying about the future, some of us have lost jobs. Some of us have lost businesses, yet we have to continue to move forward because we have to. No, sorry, still not done, but I do inch closer. It is a big book. I do not try to dwell on that too much. I write a chapter at a time, a page at a time, a sentence at a time, a word at a time. It is the only way, and sometimes I rewrite. There is no other group of people on this planet who are more aware of your writing process than your fans. Of late, I have been spending a lot of time with the Lannisters, Cersei and Tyrion in particular. I've also paid a visit to Dorne and dropped into Old Town a time or three. In addition to turning out new chapters, I've been revising some old ones, some very old, including, yes, some stuff I have read at cons ages ago, or even posted online as samples. I tweak constantly, and sometimes go beyond tweaking, moving things around, combining chapters, breaking chapters into two, reordering stuff, or writing about the election, or selling another reprinted version of an older book at a higher price, or writing about the Jets, or writing about the Giants, or writing about that beloved series Wild Cards, or writing about the Jets, or reminiscing about a show that ended in disaster, or talking about another HBO show that takes place in that world that ended in disaster. Oh, I think it's time I mention once again that the final book in this series, A Dream of Spring, will remain that forever. None of this is remotely new. No, it is not. It is how the first 5 books were written. A quick reminder, that book that he decided to reprint is A Storm of Swords, the best in the series, the one where the Red Wedding happens It turned 20 this year. It's not like we haven't been patient. A Game of Thrones was released August 1st, 1996. The third book, A Storm of Swords, which just turned 20, was released August 8th in the year 2000. George was able to release 3 books in 1,468 days. That's 4 years. Since then, we've gotten 2 books. It's been 8,866 days since the release of A Game of Thrones. I was 26. Bill Clinton was president. I was really on a roll back in June and July. Progress has continued since then, but more slowly. I suffered a gut punch in early August that really had me down for a time, and that one is completely understandable, of course, and another, and that one, again, completely understandable for different reasons. In early September, but I slogged on, and of late, I am picking up steam again, and that's good. I believe that second gut punch he was talking about was doing somebody a favor and getting practically canceled over it on Twitter, and that's why Twitter is garbage. George R. Martin responds to criticism over controversial Hugo remarks. A Song of Ice and Fire author, George R. Martin, hosted the Hugo Awards this past weekend, and there was a ton of backlash over his lengthy remarks. The last thing George R. Martin is an ist or a phobe of any kind, but look at how quickly his own people ideologically turn on him. No good deed goes unpunished. The 78th World Science Fiction Convention, aka Worldcon, was set to take place this year in New Zealand, but it didn't because of the coof, so it went virtual. That was a curveball for the Song of Ice and Fire author George R. Martin, who was chosen to be the Toastmaster for what came to be known as Conzealan. Yes, this thing has a lot of names. As Toastmaster, it fell to him to host the Hugo Awards, a yearly ceremony honoring the best in science fiction and fantasy fiction. It didn't go well. People on social media, and elsewhere have accused Martin of erasing the accomplishments of authors of color, glorifying authors and editors with regressive beliefs, and generally doing a bad job as host. Let's go over some of the accusations and then get into Martin's response. Let's not. He mispronounced a few names. He brought up a couple of authors that the hate mob on Twitter thoroughly dislike. Then he apologized. Words for our times. We are full of weakness and errors. Let us mutually pardon each other for our follies. Voltaire. Then his friend responded, George, I was deeply honored that you asked me to present an award last night. I am very angry at the choices you made with the ceremony. If you would like me to explain why to you, you have my phone number. Oh, I hope he lost it after that. But there is the reason you don't have a Winds of Winter right now, and might not ever get a Winds of Winter, and will most definitely not get a Dream of Spring. He can't write this book now. I mentioned this in my last video. The biggest reason for the delay is George and his peers, and you just got a great example of what is in store for George when and if he releases this book. And maybe he's just kicking that can down the road because he knows they are ready to pounce on him. There's no way he could write a book that is a grounded fantasy based on historical events in a feudalistic society. Strange days we live in. We can't even be historically accurate in historical dramas. How do you think it's going to go for fantasy? Nothing is going to be fun anymore unless you self-produce or self-publish. On other fronts, well, aside from the coof slowing everything down, we are making great progress on the HBO prequel series House of the Dragon. Ryan and Miguel are in London. That's Ryan Condell and Miguel Sapochnik. Casting has begun. It is all looking very exciting. And this is another reason we're probably not going to get the Winds of Winter. We're most definitely not going to get a Dream of Spring and an end to the A Song of Ice and Fire series. He stopped writing the Winds of Winter so he could write Fire and Blood Part 1, which HBO's House of the Dragon is partially based on. A book we didn't need for an HBO series. We didn't need to delay the book we actually wanted. George R. R. Martin has already come out and confirmed that HBO's Game of Thrones delayed and derailed his writing process. What do you think is going to happen with House of the Dragon? I wish I could say that things are also going great on the other television and film projects I am involved with, either as a producer or as the author of the original source material, i.e. novels and short stories. I can't. very little shooting is taking place, and almost nothing is being greenlit. Of course, development continues, but there's a reason they call it development hell. So let me see if I can keep this straight. George R. R. Martin initially was writing a pretty successful fantasy series. Then HBO adapts this and it becomes a worldwide phenomenon. Big problem. The series the show is based on isn't finished, but there's plenty of time to finish 2 more books. And we get 2 books. Unfortunately, they don't move the story forward, they move it backwards. Show passes books. Turns out Dan and Dave don't know how to do much more than adapt, and show ends in disaster. HBO cancels 5 planned prequels, but there's still Winds of Winter. HBO announces another prequel partially based on a book that George stopped writing Winds of Winter for. Lockdown happens. George has to finish the book now, but we get an update that he's got a long way to go. Then the new show that he stopped the other book for is starting production, which will be another distraction because the showrunners want to carry on the legacy of Game of Thrones, meaning we will not get the Winds of Winter. So be prepared to never find out if Samwell is killed at the Citadel by a faceless man. The results of Cersei's trial. What happens after Varys kills Uncle Kevin and Maester Pycelle? What happens with Jaime and Lady Stoneheart? What happens to Daenerys in the Dothraki Sea? What happens to Tyrion in the Battle of Fire? What happens to Ser Barristan in the Battle of Fire? What happens to Arya with the Faceless Men? Does Littlefinger get into Sansa's small clothes? Does Davos get eaten by cannibals? Does Victarion get his thralls to blow the dragon binding horn? Are all of Euron's gifts poisoned? Does Aeron Greyjoy get to meet the drowned god? Can one of the Dornish not screw something up? What's going to happen to Theon and Asha Greyjoy with Stannis the Manus? Who wrote the pink letter? Is Mance still alive? Is the Hound the Gravedigger? Where in the fuck is Benjen Stark? And most importantly of all, are any of Preston Jacobs' crackpot theories right? And last but not least, what happens to Jon Snow, who is still bleeding out at the wall? At this point, I honestly don't think we're gonna find out, and I've moved on anyway. If the book comes out, great. If it doesn't, it's okay. I've got the Silmarillion. Hey!
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I'll see you in the next video.